authorized to take final action, or presiding officers designated by the agency to make findings of facts and conclusions of law may communicate directly or indirectly in connection with any issue of fact, law, or procedure with any party or other persons legally interested in the outcome of the proceeding, except upon notice and opportunity for all parties to participate. There's a section 2 as well. Next, I read to you from.
You're not going to read the section 2?
Okay,
It doesn't
I didn't want to bore you.
Are you gonna have some amendments also? Because that's what the agenda says. You're gonna have amendments.
My brain does not hear. Okay. You want section 2, communication permitted. This section shall not prohibit any agency member or other presiding officer described in subsection 1 from communicating in any respect with other members of the agency or other presiding officers, or having the aid or advice of those members of his own agency staff, counsel, or consultants retained by the agency who have not participated and will not participate in the adjudicatory proceeding in an advocate capacity. All right, the next one is from Cornell Law Journal on due process. The Constitution states only one command twice. The Fifth Amendment says to the federal government that no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, uses the same 11 words, called the Due Process Clause, to describe a legal obligation of all states. These words have as their central promise an assurance that all levels of American government must operate within the law, legality, and provide fair procedures. And later in that same article, it lists an analysis made by the late Judge Henry Friendly in his well-regarded article, Some Kind of Hearing, generated a list that remains highly influential as to both content and relative priority of what due process means. And the 10 items are an unbiased tribunal, notice of the proposed actions and the grounds asserted for it, opportunity to present reasons why the proposed action should not be taken, the right to present evidence, including the right to call witnesses, the right to know opposing evidence, the right to cross-examine adverse witnesses, a decision based exclusively on the evidence presented, opportunity to be represented by counsel, requirement that the tribunal prepare a record of the evidence presented, requirement that the tribunal prepare written findings of fact and reasons for its decision. These are simply the kinds of procedures that might be claimed in a due process argument, roughly in order of their perceived importance, and not a list of procedures that will in fact be required. I came across another article on the Planner's Web, talking behind the public's back, the ex parte problem. Because I'm not a member of that, I do not have the entire article, but it says in part, we all like to be in the know. There are few things quite as aggravating as feeling like you're the last person to know what's going on and being on the outside looking in. That's especially true when as a citizen you're trying to find out what's happening on a proposed development project that may affect your community or possibly even your home or business. Yes, that's what can happen when our government's decision-making processes give the appearance, real or imagined, of being either one-sided or impartial, and full due process is not provided for. Ex parte in Latin meaning from or on one side only, with the other side absent or unrepresented. In a democratic society, open, fair decision-making is critical to whether the public trusts what the government is doing. In planning circles, ex parte or one-sided communication are usually problematic, either legally, ethically, or both, particularly when it involves a quasi-judicial action, such as often the case with variances for special use permits, and there's more to that article. And I came across another article. It's not from the Maine Municipal Association, but the South Carolina Municipal Association, which quite concisely talks about ex parte and due process, and it speaks about laws in that state and not necessarily in ours, but we could include that with what I'm giving you. In short, when you're amending the land use ordinance, or any other ordinances in this town, I'd like you to consider the need for some ethical guidelines for town officials, particularly in the context of due process and ex parte communications. And I'll give you the websites for them.
Paula, do you have bibliography stuff on there too, like for the, the North Carolina, whatever that was in there? Do you have that stuff?
Right.
Reference material?
The South Carolina.
So, yeah.
I copied the.
Okay.
HTTP.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's the same thing on the Cornell law, it will be who wrote that and all the information where it came from.
As far as I can remember, I downloaded them several weeks ago. I downloaded them several weeks ago, half a day, and I had to look at my in my computer cookies to see, to trace back where I got them. So I did this today and
What was her request? Ethical what?
Guidelines for ordinances.
All right, did anyone have any questions for Paula?
So you don't have a ordinance amendment to propose to us? You just want us to look into ethical guidelines for ordinances?
Yes. I also am hoping that sometime in the near future, I don't know what went on at the planning board meeting last week, what discussions were made about amendments, or if any are available for public viewing yet, or what. I haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. And when I do, I'll probably have something to say about them.
Do you want me to quickly answer that question? I can or can't, doesn't matter to me. Because Debbie just wrote the minutes today, the draft.
We have a draft copy.
Yeah, we've got a draft, and you can address it when we get to your planning board meetings, if that's what you want
Yeah,
to
so
do.
tomorrow night,
Yeah,
we're having a workshop, and
Yeah.
we'll go over that draft tomorrow night.
at 6 tomorrow
6
night.
At
o'clock?
6 tomorrow night,
Yep.
the first workshop.
Okay, anything else on that? Number 2 is Clifton Task Force on Wind input on meeting procedures. I don't know who that is.
Do you have something?
You gonna say something? Did you have anything else to say?
What did you write down? What I have something to say, but it's not on input of meeting procedures.
But you're a part of the Clifton Task Force on Wind to
Yes.
speak for them?
Yes. Last week at the planning board, Eric had mentioned that the town lawyer was writing a letter to the members or to the citizens who had voiced opinions at the last selectmen's meeting. I thought that you guys had to vote on spending money on the lawyer for such things, first of all. And why are we spending money on that?
We got a letter today from Dave. It wasn't to the citizens, it was to Carol, because she's in contact with Dave Sepchak. I don't know if we want to take that from there.
I received a letter, and Dave sent it for me to read, which I will do. I can read it now. The cost of that, I'm not sure there is a cost. He didn't tell me that. He wanted to answer his feelings about that meeting, so this is of his own volition, not something that we asked him to do. So we were not told of a cost, and I have the letter to read. And you can
So
see
what Eric John said at the planning board meeting is not true?
What did he said Dave was going to write a letter, which he did, and I have the letter right now.
It was, he
But
had,
it was not a request of anybody to do it.
okay.
what did you,
So
I mean, I don't know
I was
what
at the
you're
meeting,
talking
so-
about in reference to what Eric said. He just said the town attorney was going to draft a letter, which he did, and the only content in the letter is just to address his feelings about that meeting and express what he would have said.
He said it was in reference to the citizens who stood up and said something.
It was to what happened at the meeting, yes,
Yes, that is true.
yes.
The way I had inferred was that we had asked him to do it.
No,
Okay.
no, not at all,
Okay.
not at all.
I would like to hear it at some point tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's up to you if you want to do it now or later.
It doesn't, we might as well while we're on the subject. This is sent to me. I am liaison between the select board and our attorney in regard to any interested conversation or whatever dialogue between the situation that we're in right now, where things have gone to the Supreme Court. So, this is from Dave Sepchak regarding Peter Beckford and Julie Beckford versus Pisgah Mountain LLC and Town of Clifton. Dear Select Board, I am writing this to clarify the record regarding the Planning Board's efforts and actions in connection with the Pisgah Mountain Wind Project matter. At the December 18th, 2013 Select Board meeting, I did not speak up in response to the many comments made by the opponents of the wind project. The reason I did not speak up is that the tension at that meeting was very high, and I thought it was in everyone's best interest if I did not add to that tension. After leaving the December 18th Select Board meeting, however, I felt the record should be clarified in light of some of the harsh comments made at the meeting about the Planning Board and in particular about the Planning Board Chair, Eric Johns. I would first like to say that the Planning Board and in particular its Chair, Eric Johns, worked hundreds of difficult hours on this matter, attempting to interpret a brand new, very large, complex, and very technical ordinance. The requirements that needed to be satisfied by the project applicant were so many and were so complicated that I would not attempt to summarize them in this letter. The Planning Board members earnestly and in good faith meticulously reviewed the evidence and addressed the analyzed numerous complex, technical, and legal issues that were raised and argued by the parties. One of the comments I heard more than once from the project's opponents at the 12/18/13 Select Board meeting was how much money this has cost the town. It should be pointed out, however, that the opponents of the project argued that the applicant had violated the setback provision in the ordinance, but the Superior Court, Justice Horton, found that the record evidence supported the Planning Board's finding that the two small structures at the corner of the Beckford property were not occupied structures under the ordinance. The opponents of the project also argued that the Planning Board had erred in determining the value of the decommissioning bond, but the court found that substantial evidence in the record supported the Planning Board's finding regarding the decommissioning bond. The opponents of the project argued that the Planning Board erred in finding that the applicant demonstrated adequate financial capacity, but the court found that there was substantial evidence in the record to support the Planning Board's finding that Pisgah Mountain demonstrated adequate financial capacity. The opponents of the project argued that the Planning Board erred because the applicant's environmental impact statement was inadequate, but the court found that the Planning Board's finding that the environmental impact statement was adequate was supported by substantial evidence in the record. The opponents of the project argued that the applicant had violated the height standard in the ordinance, but the court found that the Planning Board's findings were sufficient to support its decision that the height of the proposed turbines was in compliance with the ordinance's height standard. The opponents of the project argued that the Planning Board erred with respect to the application of a tonal penalty in connection with the sound requirements, but the court found that the Planning Board was entitled to credit the evidence that was in the record in this issue. The opponents of the project argued that the applicant had not submitted sound narratives as required by the ordinance, but the court found that the Planning Board was entitled to credit the evidence in the record regarding the materials submitted by the applicant as sound narratives. The opponents of the project also argued that the Planning Board was biased, but the court found that the record did not show any actual bias on the part of any Planning Board member. The main issue on which the Superior Court found in favor of the opponents of the project was the Planning Board's waiver of the submittal requirement of pre-construction ambient sound ISO contour maps. The Planning Board did require the submission of post-construction ISO contour maps, but the planning board sound expert gave opinion that pre-construction ambient sound isocontour maps were impossible to create and not helpful in determining whether the applicant was compliant with the sound requirements of the ordinance. The planning board was also faced with a very unclear paragraph-long waiver provision in its ordinance. The planning board had the difficult choice of either requiring from the applicant a submittal that its own sound expert said was impossible to submit and not helpful, or to waive that submittal requirement. The Superior Court disagreed with the sound expert's opinion and found that the planning board could not waive the submittal requirement under the murky waiver provision in the ordinance. The other issue on which the Superior Court apparently found the planning board's analysis to be in error involved an extremely technical issue involving the use of one or another ground absorption factor in a formula for calculating a difference in decibels on two separate scales in connection with the issue of low frequency sound. The Superior Court would not allow the planning board to consult its sound expert on remand with respect to this difficult technical sound formula. The opponents of the project also argued many other issues at the planning board level and the boards of appeals level. Many issues were argued at all three levels. In short, at least as far as attorney time goes, there was much more time spent working on issues on which the planning board's decisions were affirmed by the Superior Court than on the two issues where the opponents of the project prevailed at the Superior Court level. While it is okay for the opponents to take the shotgun approach where they attack numerous issues hoping to succeed on at least one, it does not seem fair for the opponents of the project to then blame the planning board for the amount of time and money spent on the matter. The planning board chair, Eric Johns, spent the greatest amount of time working meticulously to address each of the many requirements of the ordinance and each of the many issues raised by the opponents of the project. He worked hundreds of hours on difficult, complex, and technical issues and showed a great deal of energy and patience throughout the process. On the large majority of the issue, the planning board's decisions were affirmed at the Superior Court level. The applicant and the opponents of the project both have filed notices of appeal, and several issues will now be argued by them to the Supreme Court of Maine. I personally understand the strong feelings that people have when they feel they are defending their land, but I also have an appreciation for the great amount of time and effort put in by the planning board, and in particular by its chair, Eric Johns, in an attempt to be fair and provide a fair process to all involved in this difficult matter. Best regards, Dave Sepchak. This was CC to the planning board as well as sent to the town of Clifton. Any comments from anybody? I make a motion that we put this into our record for tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor? All right. Any more from the Clifton Task Force? Conlon?
I would just like to say something in regards to that. It does not anywhere say that the opponents of the wind project are citizens. We are citizens, taxpayers of Clifton.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, we didn't write the letter, so I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
I just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 3 guest was Bruce Jellison about a security system.
To the select board. Over the last probably 3 or 4 years, there have been several incidents that have happened in the office where, from what I've been told and understand, that the girls in the office have felt there has been inappropriate behavior by some members of the public. A couple of times I believe they feel they've been at risk. What I'm asking is for the select board to look into putting in a video surveillance system in the office. Because what has happened in all of these incidents going back several years, it ends up being a he said, she said situation. And there is no way for either the select board or, if it rises to that level, for the police to review what actually happened and to determine whether someone should be summoned or whether you should get a restraining order. So I am requesting that the select board look into putting in a video surveillance system, at least in the office, for that purpose. My experience in various retail situations is once there's a security system in with a sign that says recording, most such behaviors go away to start with. And to give you an idea, I'm not sure if you have contingency funds or if this is something, the reason I'm bringing this up now is I know you're doing budget.
Correct.
And to give you an idea, for instance, at Sam's Club, you can get an 8-channel, 4-camera security system for only $299. A Samsung 4-channel, 4-camera is $399. It probably wouldn't take more than 1 or 2 cameras to cover the office, and you could always use the others either on the exterior of the building or this is something for the board to consider, and if you want me to do further research, I'll be glad to do it for the board. The one deficiency I see in these particular systems is that they don't record sound as well. But I believe there are systems, and probably not much more expensive, that would also record sound. Leave it to the board.
We had actually, just a second, Paula, we had actually talked about it over the years at various times. We had talked about outside because of the sand shed. We'd always thought about that. When we had the dumpsters, we were having other people come in, we thought about putting one out there, and then in the office and in here. So it has been talked about. So, yes, Paula?
But that was what I was gonna say, when we brought it up before, we were concerned, a lot of concern about people coming in the door and going in the restroom.
Right.
And the worker in the office had no idea who was in the same building.
Yeah, yeah. So that was another one we talked about, and that was another consideration. So, yes, John?
Do you have an estimate on installation, what it would cost? About the same?
These systems can be installed just by town people. I mean, these are do-it-yourself systems. Swan in particular does have professional installation available. I did not look into the cost. I found their website difficult to get at, and that's where they said to go to get a installer.
Are you offering to help the office help do an installation?
I would, yes. These are not difficult systems. They basically have software that goes on the computer to transfer, but it's a hard drive video recording system. They all record a very high definition video in color during the day, infrared, the black and white image at night. No problem recognizing people.
All right, well, I know we have that in our budget to discuss when we have our meetings, so thank you very much. Yeah, if you have your figures, you could give one of the ladies,
Okay.
unless you got it written down, I don't know.
This one, so I need
I can't remember what the 3 was.
It was the Samsung 399. All right, planning board report minutes.
That's just a draft.
So that's just for our information.
Yes.
Did you say what you wanted to when you responded?
Yeah, I mean, kind of in a nutshell, just to believe you, we now have a game plan to have a minimum of 2 presentations periods available for every single workshop. That each presentation would be 10 minutes with 5 minutes of Q&A, and the only stipulation was you had to get your paperwork in by the Friday before the meeting, so there's not even like a long time thing, and you had to just write down like 2 or 3 sentences for what it's about, then come make a presentation for up to 10 minutes, and then 5 minutes of Q&A, and then the next presentation, and then we'll have 90 minutes roughly on average of having a workshop on, what you're saying and whatever we had planned. And tomorrow night, the plan is to put together a schedule for what sections will be talked about what night for the next, multiple months, so that if people are interested in a certain section, they'll be able to come on the particular nights that they're interested in and not have to come to everyone and hope that something comes up or whatever that they're interested in. So we want it to be completely transparent like that.
Are you looking at the ordinance from cover to cover? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole thing, end to end. And I don't know if did Bill get those pink booklets back to you? Yeah, I had printed out a bunch of them, and Bill made some booklets up, and I think they're next door.
Well, he needs to make more because each member received them already.
Okay.
I have what I copied off. I believe.
All right, thanks. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty easy to make presentations.
We also received a letter from Eric. It's to the citizens of Clifton. I'm not going to read it. It's going here, and it'll be available tomorrow if anyone wants a copy of it.
Make a motion we accept it, or just do that? I make a motion we accept Eric Tom's letter.
Second motion. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Board of Appeals, no minutes. As far as I know, we will be going into executive session for employee reviews, but I'll save that till last. CEO report.
What you have in front of you is the year-end permits that were issued this year. I believe also you have a letter from the state. The project that I was working on, the community grant, was approved. I have a little more work to do, and then we're going to put them up to bid.
I'll make a motion, we accept Rick's year-end report.
Second.
All in favor? And thank you for working on that grant.
No problem.
Anybody have any questions for Rick? You need to stay, though.
I know.
ACO report. I'll make a motion, we accept the report and pay her mileage.
Second motion.
All in favor? And we did have an email from Carla that she can return to work February 7th with no restrictions. She has limited workability until then. So, if, I know Deb and I both have gotten calls on the weekends for some animals, so if for some reason you hear someone in the community that can't get a hold of Carla, there is a dispatch number you can call for the animals, and then we'll probably get called. So just keep that in mind. She's had some surgery and stuff, so she'll be back on her feet in no time. The Eddington Fire Department report is for our review. SAD 63, you didn't get one?
Have we had anybody jump up to be our school board rep?
No.
Oh, shucks. Jazz?
There was only more hours in the day.
I know. I think Michelle found that out too.
Treasurer's report.
You have your monthly reports in your folder, along with real estate collection. And there is a letter from Foster
Yes.
that needs to be signed. And I can procedure that and make an appointment.
This is the letter we have from Foster and Company is to confirm our services for the audit of January 31st, 2014.
Procedure that they follow.
Okay.
Sorry, just making
And make a motion, we sign the letter of intent from Foster and Company and sign it.
Second. All in favor?
I just got that, so that's why it's on
Yep.
the agenda.
Yep.
So it's important to be on the meeting.
Alright.
And one other thing that we received from the municipal is a public hearing next week. I don't know if Carol wants to sit on that. I don't know if it's, I don't think it's on, you know. Oh, no, it isn't.
Well, we had gotten an email from Maine Municipal, but it is Wednesday, I think. Do you have a copy of it there?
Yeah, the 22nd.
Yeah. But essentially, it's at the State House in the Appropriations Committee room. It just says it's extremely important that municipal officials throughout the state attend this public hearing and explain to the legislators on the Appropriations Committee how important it is to your local communities that revenue sharing program not be completely dismantled, which will occur if this proposed legislation or something like it is not enacted during this legislative background. In trying to construct a letter to add into our budget and town report today, I have been perusing some of our townsmen magazines and looking at just what this legislation actually looked like. And I just want to read you a little bit of this. There were 4 core systems that Maine's municipal leaders were seeking to protect when the legislative session began 6 or 7 months ago. Municipal revenue sharing, state funding for K through 12, public education, transportation investments, and water-based infrastructure, including drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater management systems. And what I read in the book that is produced by the Maine Municipal Association, that particular core was not protected, and the ultimate overall task of the legislators and of municipalities, which we are one of 492 in the state of Maine. There are 492 plantations, towns, cities that are the state's municipal governments, and we are one of them. So with those 4 things that we look at, where part of the state funding gets dispersed to municipalities, each year that dispensation gets smaller and the opportunity for us to participate becomes more, which is probably going to happen. So now they're asking that municipal officials come to this particular meeting at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. I feel it certainly is necessary that somebody go and represent our municipality. I would certainly be happy to do that if my schedule
What was 4 areas again? It was drinking water, stormwater.
Municipal revenue sharing, which is the bulk of, that's something we depend on. State funding for K through 12 public education, transportation investments, which means money for our roads and highways,
Okay.
and water-based infrastructure, including drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater management systems.
Okay, so municipal revenue sharing is like one of the 4 categories.
Correct. Correct.
The first 3, this town gets money from every
Yes.
year and goes into what we spend.
Right.
Right now, we
The others are
receive-
probably in the form of grants on the
Yeah.
water management that
Right.
cities can apply
The
for.
water-based infrastructure did pertain to a couple of grants that Maine Municipal Association sponsored to try to help enforce the Clean Safe Water Act and, safe communities and all that.
Is there any assessment in Clifton for like how much money that totals or how much money we get from each category?
Yes. Well, we don't have those numbers for right now
I
for
have
this.
revenue sharing this
Yeah.
far, sorry,
Yeah,
35,000 this far, which I'm sure we're
Yeah.
at the end of that
Yeah.
year. And we had a representative call today urging the urgency for any select board, town official to be part of the meeting next week. Because right now Clifton is looking at losing all of that but $10,000. So that's all we're gonna receive.
And I think the roads one, if I remember right, is right around 20,000 for us a year. Does that sound right?
Yes.
So there's like 50,000 basically, and what about the school one? That's probably the biggest.
School is the biggest, and what's happened and what I read in that article, I don't think it's changed, but a lot of that retirement compensation to teachers is going to start, some of that financial process may start coming out of local government budgets. So, I think this is, and the only reason that I state this is that as citizens of the town, we truly have to get back to what's happening right now, right here. This is our local government. We are losing money from a state level, as are every other municipalities in the state. We are looking to try to see how that's going to work here, and we need to start having some citizen involvement and understanding and getting the word out that that's what's happening. I mean, again, it is how do we incite interest in our town? We get a lot when there's a controversy in town, and I understand that. I applaud people coming out and expressing their opinions and voting and all of the votes that we've had. That's democracy. That's how it should be. But the part of it is we sit up here and try to man and govern the town, and we're looking at how do we make this work. I watched the news a few days ago, and there's a small town that is going bankrupt. They have no money. So what do we do? You know, and at meetings, we have 700 and some odd citizens. How many are here? How many are ever here? So again, that is my point of trying to incite some community involvement. And I need suggestions, I need input, we all do. We are doing the very best we can, but at times when things are mandated like this, our best is not good enough. Paula?
In past years, I've noticed in other towns that they have advertised budget hearings or budget meetings before town meeting.
Mhm.
And I've wondered if we should not perhaps make more of a big deal about that, of letting people know, we're talking about the budget on this date.
Right.
And maybe attract some people that way, saying, you know, maybe throw out
Mhm.
one or two topics that you're really wrestling with. If the garbage, the trash collection is going up, or
Mhm.
revenue sharing is
Mhm.
coming down,
Mhm.
to grab people's interest, to get them to come out
Yep,
before saving it all up for town meeting.
right.
Well, we do, Paula, have workshops. We've had, how many so far? No one has come. It's been posted, it's been in our minutes, no one comes.
I'm too nearsighted, but do you put it out on the sign?
Kind of hard when the snowbanks are
Yeah.
pretty high.
I don't know, I drive too
But we
fast,
do
and I'm too
as a
nearsighted,
rule.
I don't notice.
Does it go out in emails to the citizens?
Yeah.
that are on email?
The list that we have, they get notified. And Facebook, we've been trying to be really good with that and getting out the word. We know how people love Facebook, so.
And I think two of our biggest variables for the town involve the state and the school district. We don't have control over what the school does, and we don't have control over what the state does, other than what was just brought up tonight. And the school is, after our town meeting, we find out how much we have to pay them. So that's not even, we're not even working on that. In the state, I believe last year, we either found out just before or just after our annual meeting
Close.
what their
And
changes
we
were
have no
gonna be.
say in the county assessment,
No.
that's whatever they say.
Yep.
So it's tough on those biggest issues that potentially fluctuate the most for us. We have no control over here, or very little.
We have talked at numerous meetings also about communication. You know, the town has a website, it needs some work done to it. I went back and visited a few other websites this afternoon, which, I mean, are full of information, with announcements and all kinds of different things. But again, we need to have volunteers who may be willing to help us do that. We've talked about a newsletter. You know, again, it's one of us trying to go out and get information to put in a newsletter and publish it, but then it's also costly to publish a newsletter. So that's why we went back to the email route and Facebook, which I get a little perplexed about, because I just think it's an avenue for, you know, you write something and push a send button, and that drives me crazy. And also is retrievable. No matter what it is, it's retrievable. So people have to be of strong character and will to know what they're doing and saying, and be careful about it. But input is welcome, and please, please pass the word. We had conversation last year about having a Clifton Day, a summer get-together of some description. But again, it was my idea, it would be a committee of one. I've had a conversation with somebody that had one in Newburgh, and hope to contact her for something that could be fun, that could be cheap to run, but to get people out of their houses and know who is in their community and who is doing what. You know, it's even, and I'm sorry I'm on the bandbox here, but I only got a limited time to talk. You know, it's just, I mean, it's like the ice storm. How many people do we have in our town that are senior citizens that truly we have note of in the office and who we need to check on and worried about? You know, we're trying to establish and have established this as a disaster center. You know, are we ready if we have to have that happen? You know, those are the things that should be pertinent on the front burner of what we need to do in this town. And I'm hoping that we can resurrect some of those things and have some citizens that want to help us do that. So Thank you for your time, but that's what's happening. So, I will be happy to make an attempt to go next Wednesday. I'd love to have some company.
I'll go with you.
Fabulous. All right. Will the town pay for our gas?
Sure.
No, forget it. I just thought I'd be smart. Okay.
No, I believe
All right.
that, I believe you were
Get
reimbursed.
your chauffeur-driven Cadillac.
What?
Get your chauffeur-driven
You
Cadillac.
want to drive in? Okay, all right. All right, thank you.
All right, so, for the public hearing in Augusta next week, it looks like Carol, Nancy, and Deb, are you going as well?
You want to?
I'll make a motion that, Deb, Nancy, Carol go if their time permits, next Wednesday. And you're okay with being able? Okay. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Okay, all in favor?
We want to go? Okay.
All right. Clerk's report.
Pretty much just putting together.
The annual report.
I really made strides in getting the reports in this week. So I should be able to have something for you to review by next week.
Okay, so if all of us can stop in the office and pick up what Kathy has ready for the report so we can review it, make corrections, suggestions. I know Carol has these selectmen's reports, so.
I have to make some corrections to it, but I brought it for everybody to read tonight, and then I'll do that and get it to you.
Okay. No old business. New business. The policy procedure, our meeting procedure.
Here's the draft.
I think we already have drafts. Oh, that's something different. Is that 1, 2, 3 or ABC?
So she did,
I printed off
the
the.
print sheet printed copies for everybody who's already got it, so we've got 2
Is that the
copies.
same thing?
We just weren't sure
You
if
might
it was
lose
the
the
same.
changes, Nancy.
Put that suggestion on there that I added.
I think there were a couple of
It's not
corrections
here.
on it, so you might want to use
Kid,
mine.
pass them down, there might be
Yeah.
more.
Might use it.
I don't know. They look the same to me.
Give this to John. I think everybody probably has looked at this and read it, except maybe Ed. I don't know, I really chance to read it to you. It was the last meeting, we voted to.
2 meetings ago. 2 meetings ago.
2 meetings ago, the meeting rules, the select board's meeting rules and procedures. And, this is what I've come up with. Do you want me to read it? Do you want me
Sure.
to- Okay.
Sure.
Number 1, the Clifton Board of Select Persons meeting rules of procedure shall be governed by the Clifton Ethics Policy. Number 2, regular meetings of the Select Board shall be held at the Clifton Town Office at 6 p.m. on the 3rd Wednesday of each calendar month, or as otherwise deemed necessary or required by law. Special meetings may be called at the discretion of the chair or the request of the majority of the board. Notice of all board meetings shall be given as required by law, and all such meetings shall be open to the public except as otherwise provided by law. The chairman may cancel meetings for inclement weather or emergencies and reschedule to the following week or most appropriate time. The board may vote at any regular meeting to change the following meeting by a vote of the board. A majority of the board shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of any business. The 3rd, officers of the board shall consist of a chair and vice chair to be chosen annually by the board members unless otherwise prohibited by law. The chair shall preside at all board meetings to maintain order and determine the course of proceedings. In the event of an emergency requiring input from the chair or the vice chair, they are not available, the most tenured select person available will assume the role as chair or appoint another select person to assume that role for the board until the chair or vice chair become available. In the absence of the chair, the vice chair shall preside and shall have the same authority. The town clerk shall maintain a permanent record of all board meetings and all correspondence of the board, which shall be public record except as otherwise provided by law. Number 4, All regular and special meetings of the board shall be open to the public and the media. Only those executive meetings where the board discuss matters where private sessions are required or permitted by law shall be closed to the public and the media. Number 5, because the board desires to hear the viewpoints of all its residents and non-residents, and also needs to conduct its business in an orderly and efficient manner, a time limit of 5 minutes per speaker will be enforced. When the speaker has presented their view and the board has acknowledged and or responded, then the speaker may ask and receive additional time at the discretion of the board. Persons wishing to address the board must request to be on the agenda at the town office by 2 p.m. on the Friday before the regular meeting of the select board. The requester is required to give the office staff a topic of their discussion. Number 6, public access will be included at the end of the agenda. Any person in attendance that wishes to comment on the business conducted at the board meeting may address the chair and ask to be allowed to comment. Their request may be granted at the discretion of the board. Public participation will be governed under the 5-minute rule for addressing the board as stated above. The board shall give due attention to comments and contributions from the audience, but shall not be expected to respond or take action immediately.
The one comment that I have, Nancy, and I think it came with the planning board when we were discussing that last, or they were discussing that last week. If we have multiple participants in the public access,